In Lagos State, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has presented the 2.2 trillion naira 2024 budget estimate to the Lagos State House of Assembly. He said, of course, there is a total of 1.2 trillion making up capital expenditure, while a sum of 1.02 trillion will go for recurrent expenditure. Here is the governor.
Our driving vision here is to bequeath to Lagosians a truly intermodal system of transportation. Like all flourishing megacities around the world, a system that is seamless, that interconnects various modes of transportation. In our case, we'll be connecting road, rail, and water transportation. We are already on our way to achieving this. I think it's important to also mention that there are some large-scale transformational infrastructural initiatives that we are planning to embark upon. The Lagos International Airport, our food and logistics hub that we're currently doing, the phase 2 construction of the Lagos Metro Rail, and the 4th Mainland Bridge, and the Wu Creek. Between these projects are interventions that we believe will change the infrastructure landscape of Lagos. These are projects that will cost billions of naira, and we're committed to showing strong leadership in effect to raising this financing.
It is highly important for us to apply the right indices towards ensuring a performing and functioning budget that will lift our people out of poverty and reposition the state toward infrastructural growth and renewal. Lagos State House of Assembly is committed to this and will use all constitutional instruments to achieve this.
All right, joining us from our Lagos studios to react to the budget is renowned economist Dr. Teriba, who of course is the CEO of Economic Associates. Dr. Teriba, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. So what do you make of this? You're very welcome, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. So what do you make of the budget? What are your thoughts?
Thank you. Oh, well, it's the highest to be announced so far by any state in the Federation. It's a record setting for Lagos itself. And more impressive, is the fact that the bulk of this budget is going to be funded by internally generated revenue. The revenue projection is about 1.8 trillion. And 1.2 trillion of it is coming from internal sources. Only 600 billion or thereabout, less than 600 billion, less than half of the IGR will come from transfers from the center. And if you look at where they are at in terms of spending in 2023, up to the end of September, they had only spent 1 trillion. And on course, perhaps to fulfill their plans to spend 1.3 trillion by full year as budgeted in 2023. So jumping from 1 trillion, 1.3 trillion to 2.2 trillion will make a huge difference in the lives of Lagosians, especially since the government was very painstaking in listing, their achievements in terms of project delivery, across transportation, across health, across education, environment, and the rest of it. And if you look at the sectoral breakdown as well, it speaks to continuity, that their priority remains the same, to ensure that infrastructure is provided, particularly transport infrastructure, intermodal transport infrastructure, rail, road, and water, that befits Lagos as given its status as a mega city. And next to that are the social sectors of health and education, environment, and safety, security of lives and property in Lagos. Given the track record of 78% performance up to September, and which looks likely that they will achieve more than 90% by December. Hearing the new revenue figures, the new spending figure coming from a state that is known to be credible enough to walk their talk. If they say they are going to spend this amount, they have the capacity to mobilize such an amount to spend. And if they say we are going to deliver on this project, they have the capacity. Their recurrent performance was 80% at the end of September, and the capital was 75%. September itself is 3/4 of the year. So you needed to have performed by 75%, and the minimum on capital was just that 75%. Overall, it was 78%, and recurrent was 80%. So it's heartwarming, it's encouraging.
Okay,
and
so
the list of the mega projects that they plan, the airport, the food distribution hub, completing, the Blue Line project, speaks to their intention, their desire to attract investment, both from domestic direct investors and foreign direct investors. The governor is yet to put figures to how much investment they are looking at, how much from domestic direct investors, how much from the foreign direct investors, but he did say that they are going to rely heavily on the private sector, and the state will facilitate, getting the needed investment into these projects. It's also heartwarming, that Lagos, shouldn't rely only on what revenue it can mobilize internally or get from the center, but also give a pride of place to investors to contribute their quota, so that the state's development, can be firing on all possible cylinders, rotors.
all right. On infrastructure, talking about the capital expenditure, up to I think you said 70% or so up to September. Looking at the overview for this budget for 2024, I think it's about a 200 billion naira difference or so. I think recurrent at 1.02, I think capital at 1.2. So I want to ask you about Lagos State infrastructure. Since if we focus on capital expenditure, because Dr. Teriba, I'm in Abuja now. I flew in here on Sunday. On Saturday night, I spent 2 hours in traffic just between Lekki and Victoria Island on a Saturday evening. So I need to get your take on Lagos State infrastructure, vis-a-vis where the capital expenditure is going. The T, of course, in the themes is transportation. So what is your take on Lagos State infrastructure as it is now?
Oh, well, the speech itself is very rich, in the progress that they have made with new rail lines and new rail service, and water transport service, and the number of trips that the rail services are making, the number of passengers that the water transport are ferrying, and the road, all the roads, is said that there is no part of Lagos where they have not commissioned a new road. And the projects are, quite ubiquitous. They are there for everyone to see. The rail service that was recently commissioned, the one that he says will be commissioned in the first quarter of 2024. So I do not think that the attainments of Lagos State in the area of transportation is hidden. It's very evident. And one would expect that now that they have more revenue to mobilize, the last year's budget was only 1.3 trillion. And this year's budget was only is only 1.0 trillion. So 2024 budget has proposed to spend 2.2 trillion. So you should expect to see more. I would think that issues of infrastructural management is a journey, not necessarily a destination. The specifics of why you had to spend 2 hours in traffic between Lagos, between Ikoyi and Victoria Islands, well, has to, be found out, and interrogated. Disruptions, I leave it to the managers of the traffic to explain, where the disruptions came from. But we know that the Lekki axis in particular is quite prone, to congested, traffic. The Ikoyi, Victoria Island, Lagos, this spill over into Ikoyi, Victoria Island axis. I do not think you should expect that the time will come that occasional, traffic congestion will not occur. Since the removal of the fuel subsidy, we've seen much lighter traffic in most parts of Lagos, as people now have to think twice before they make trips, because fuel now costs a lot more. People try to rationalize the trip. So traffic has largely been light, but hotspots, Lagos Island, Ikoyi, VI, and Lekki, you still cannot rule out, congestion, because there are so many places of attraction for shopping, for hospitality, and the rest of it.
I want to ask you about the cost of living in Lagos State. Maybe it's because it's the commercial capital of the nation. But if you look at inflation figures, at least for October, and I know we should be getting inflation for November, hopefully tomorrow. But Lagos is above the nation as far as the national average is concerned. And I think in terms of food inflation, Lagos is up there with Kogi states and one other states, if we get those inflation figures up in a moment. But yeah, there they are. So Lagos headline inflation, 31.3. Nigeria is at 27.3. Food inflation, 37.3. Nigeria at 31.52. What do you make of the cost of living? Is it because it's Lagos State? What's your take on the cost of living in this state?
Oh, well, Lagos is the most densely populated state in the country, speaking to the fact that they have one of the highest population, but perhaps the lowest land area. And much of the food that get eaten in Lagos, whether you are talking about food or livestock, come from other parts of the country. And in this period of high fuel costs, you would expect Lagos to reflect a bit more of the food cost shock, the food and the energy cost shocks, that had beset the whole world. These are likely to be more pronounced at densely populated areas like Kogi. Kogi is bordered by 10 states, including the FCT. So it's also, it's a major transit point, in the nation. And so if you get a little more of the price, pressure in Ore, in Kogi, in Lagos, it's not a surprise because you have more congestion in terms of people trying to get, the supply of food and energy than elsewhere in the country.
But I can't let you go without asking you about the wider economy, where at the end of the year, there's a lot that's been going on. Can you give us your economic outlook for 2024, looking beyond Lagos now for the wider country?
Okay, Rotus, we are at that season of the year where the government is engaging us in reflection on how the budget has performed in the year that is coming to an end, and proposals about what they plan to spend and to achieve what purpose in the coming year. The president has himself proposed the budget for next year before the National Assembly. And the National Assembly has gone to work. I knew that the following week a retreat was held in which they debated the best directions in which to revise the proposals that had been placed before them by the government. Like the government of Lagos State that has reported that, well, they had achieved 78% of their plans as of September. In the case of the federal government, it's a bit mixed. Government has achieved more than 100% of the revenue aspirations as of September, and looks set, to fulfill that revenue plans for the full year with some, overshoot. And that gives credibility to the projection of 18 trillion revenue for the federal government next year. It will be the first time that any government in the past 8 years will announce the revenue that we, independent observers, will consider credible, usually without that they will realize the revenue aspirations. And that doubt had subsisted until July. If you looked at the MTF, the revenue performance of the federal government up to July was an undershoot of 20%. So it took the reforms, that the present government introduced, particularly the unification of the exchange rate, to block revenue leakages, that has enabled them to hit, the budget aspirations, and now look set to continue to do so going forward. That's positive news. The other good news is that the federal government has borrowed only about 40% of what they had planned, the deficit they had planned to run. So 2023 might go down as the first time in 9 years that, we thought we would violate the Fiscal Responsibility Act, but which we didn't. You are going to end up with a deficit that is less than 3% of GDP, although we had intended to run one that was 6% of GDP and make excuses that it was extraordinary. So, and that looks set to become the reality even in 2024. But the part that more work needs to be done is that as of September, only 25% of the capital budget had been fulfilled. There remains a 75% undershoot. Only about 1.5 trillion has been spent on capital headings out of the about 6 trillion that had been intended in the budget. And it is good that although the government in their 6 months in office has not been able to change that situation, but they have said enough to indicate how they want to address it by saying that they are going to stop borrowing, they are going to leverage assets to raise equity. And so the conversation at the Senate was more about becoming more specific about what assets you want to leverage in the 2024 budget to attract domestic direct investment, to attract foreign direct investment, to leverage upon to attract funding through public-private partnership, and perhaps also diaspora bonds or other types of foreign currency bonds. So if the government could fill those gaps in the final, budget that will be signed into law by the end of this month, then the hopes will be high that we should score another positive in the course of 2024, that our capital budget will be fully funded, although now relying on equity rather than debt, relying on private investment rather than government revenue. So it's a scenario thing, so if 2024 ends like 2023, in which we want to do infrastructure projects but we can't find money to do them, then you can't expect, a different outcome if you keep doing things the same way. But if we do succeed in securing the foreign direct investment, and there's no reason why Nigeria shouldn't, be able to raise foreign direct investment, to pump into key infrastructure, then the story might change. Then the budget might indeed renew our hopes. Basically, that's how I will respond to the question about the outlook of the economy. It depends on the extent to which the government is able to break new paths in terms of getting investment financing.
Robust as ever. Dr. Ayo Teriba, CEO of Economic Associates, thank you so much for joining us to talk not only about the Lagos State budget, but also about giving the outlook for 2024. We thank you so much for your time.